Robby, what's on your radar?
So when members of Congress, the Cabinet, and the Supreme Court entered the U.S. House chambers for President Joe Biden's State of the Union address last night, well, they were almost entirely unmasked. Cursory attempts at social distancing were quickly abandoned, and after Biden finished his speech, the country's highest elected officials shook hands and hugged and breathed in each other's faces like it was 2019. In the remarks themselves, Biden heralded an end to the era of COVID-19.
We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives.
Now, it's fascinating that the president would even make that concession, because as recently as 1 month ago, many Democrats and their allies in the mainstream media assailed Republican-controlled municipalities for easing up on pandemic restrictions. But then some focus group polling convinced Democratic strategists that, well, the American people were losing patience rapidly, and the party immediately changed course. The fact that the vaccines held up well against the Omicron surge, at least in terms of severe cases, also helped. But it's worth repeating that even now, with the Biden administration heralding a nearly universal return to normal and Democratic officials celebrating with few masks in sight, there remains a key U.S. demographic languishing under strict mask mandates: school children, in some cities controlled by Democrats. Indeed, in Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser announced on Tuesday that students would no longer be required to wear masks while outside. This means, of course, that masks are still required inside the schools. It's gratifying, of course, that children can finally discard their masks while playing sports or enjoying outdoor recess, but it's also infuriating that it took this long for officials to throw in the towel. But most of the school day is spent indoors, not outdoors, where D.C. students are still expected to wear masks. And there's just no justification for this whatsoever. No one's even making one. Young people are not at serious risk of a negative COVID-19 health outcome. Unvaccinated kids and teens are safer from the disease than older Americans who are vaccinated. They are much safer than members of the U.S. House of Representatives, average age 57, the Senate, average age 62, or the Supreme Court, average age 64. If Biden's State of the Union guests didn't have to mask indoors, why should kids? Biden appeared to understand that schools can and should drop pandemic restrictions immediately.
The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school.
Biden said that most Americans should be able to go without masks. And most Americans is a category that certainly includes young people. School districts still clinging to forcible masking should take note. Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, someone I rarely agree with, noticed how stupid the State of the Union's selective COVID theater was. AOC got it. They embraced slight social distancing in order to keep out the press. For science or something? You know, Ryan, and you mentioned this when you came in this morning. You said you got the new guidance outdoors, no more masking.
Right.
Hooray! What progress!
Right, for D.C. schools, and the kids are very excited. They don't have to wear masks when they're outside now.
They still have to wear them inside.
But they still have to wear them inside.
It doesn't make any sense. No one is even making an argument that this makes sense anymore. They're just doing it.
Yeah, I haven't seen an alert for a case in at least a few days. You know, there's still a case here or there.
Yeah.
But you know, at least in our school and at least in our area, the kids who've gotten it have been, you know, sniffles and fine. But yeah, the kids are, the kids are very adaptable. And yes, it's true that a lot of kids have done okay and they've continued wearing the mask, but they are ready. A lot of kids are just ready to be done with this, and there's no justification for it anymore. Your point is good. If a 62-year-old senator can safely be indoors without a mask, then a 6-year-old can safely be indoors without a mask.
Yeah, I just can't understand. I can't handle the theater aspect of it. They come in, they're kind of social distancing a little bit. Like it looked like they were trying half-hearted social distancing.
Like a bar at 6 p.m. compared to a bar at midnight.
Right. Right. Some people were sitting every other, but then other people weren't. And then as soon as Biden's done, they're hugging, they're kissing, they're getting very handsy with each other. But good for them.
Yeah.
They're old people, and they're old people.
They are old people.
They're very old.
And they're rather important.
They're important old
Right.
people,
Yes.
and they're done with it.
Right, exactly. So there's just so much frustration out there with the school administrations because there doesn't seem to be the same urgency. Like there doesn't seem to be from the administrators the same "we're all in this together" type of attitude. Like if you felt from the very beginning of the pandemic an attitude from school administrators that this is awful, like we understand how awful this is, and we're doing everything reasonable that we can to make it less awful, then I think there would be a lot more sympathy and a lot more working together between parents and teachers and administrators. But the opportunities that they had to do, the most reasonable things were never really taken in a lot of these blue areas. Like the idea that we're just now allowing kids to take their masks off at recess is crazy town.
Right, while they're running, while they're playing sports.
Right, there's no evidence at all that like running outdoors is any source of significant spread ever anywhere in the country.
And I know there are some kids who really don't mind the masks. It's no big deal. That's totally fine. I get it. There are other kids who really hate wearing them, and there are situations where it's just much harder to understand other students, to understand your teachers. It's inhibiting communication and socialization and learning. In some cases, not all cases. So there's no reason they shouldn't have the flexibility to take them off.
Right.
If you still want to wear it, you can, but like, come on. And no one is making either case at this point that this is significantly reducing like the spread of COVID or the spread of COVID in schools, or that the kids are more vulnerable than anyone else. They're less vulnerable than anybody else, and nobody else is doing it anymore.
Right. Right. And there's also a difference between don't mind at all and do it willingly and do it without complaining, because a lot of kids, and mine happen to be in this category, that they do it basically on their own and without complaining, but they do mind it. Mm-hmm. Like if you ask them if they're excited to stop having to wear the masks, they are. Now they understand it's a pandemic and everyone else is wearing a mask, so they're going to wear a mask.
Sure.
Now there are plenty of kids that straight up fight it and hate it and want to pull it off and this and that, but you shouldn't take kids' acquiescence as happiness about the situation, and I think that happened too quickly. That a lot of school administrators and a lot of parents were like, oh, they're not complaining that much. They complain about brushing their teeth at night. They complain about everything, but they're not complaining about this. So it must be okay. And it turns out, no, it's not okay. They just recognize that this is something that they're going to have to do.
Yeah, and it was being treated just like brushing your teeth or something. Yeah, it's just something you do now. You got to wear a mask 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
No.
Except they don't just brush their teeth.
they go.
Maybe some
They go
kids
into the
do.
night kicking and screaming.
Yes.
I thought brushing my teeth as a kid too.
The worst.
Don't want to do it. Well, our rising panel will join us next, so stay with us for that.